Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a history that's probably closer to your bedside table than you think. A tale as old as humanity itself, the universal struggle of actually getting out of bed in the morning. Imagine for a moment, you're tucked in, just as you are now. The world outside still a gentle murmur of the night. But what if there was no little device glowing beside you? No insistent beep or gentle melody to pull you from the sweet embrace of sleep? Humanity has wrestled with this precise problem for millennia, and honestly, without some clever inventions, you probably wouldn't survive your first Monday morning commute, not would you? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me, where are you tuning in from tonight? And what time is it there as you prepare to nod off? Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are lying in your bed, perhaps feeling that familiar, heavy pull of slumber. Think about the last time you woke up. Was it the jarring electronic shriek of your phone, a gentle chime, the rising sun filtering through your curtains, or perhaps a small, insistent cat demanding breakfast? For most of us in the modern world, waking up on time is a given, a minor inconvenience orchestrated by a piece of technology we barely think about. But cast your mind back, way back, before smartphones, before digital displays, before even the clunky spring-loaded beasts we call mechanical alarm clocks. How did our ancestors, those ambitious early risers, manage to peel themselves from their cozy hay beds and face the dawn? It's a surprisingly fascinating question, steeped in ingenuity and a touch of desperation. For a vast stretch of human history, your alarm clock was, well, nature. You'd wake with the first hint of pre-dawn light, or perhaps the insistent squawking of a nearby rooster, who, let's be honest, probably wasn't running on precise atomic time. Or maybe it was the chatter of birds, the gentle rise of the sun painting the sky with colors only Mother Nature can mix. You see, early humans had a rhythm largely dictated by the sun. If you were a hunter-gatherer, you didn't need to be at the office by 9 a.m. You needed to be awake when the light allowed you to forage or hunt, and you'd sleep when darkness fell. Simple, right? But then, society got complicated. People started needing to wake up at specific times, independent of the sun. Monks needed to rise for matins, early prayers before dawn. Farmers needed to hit the fields before the sun scorched the earth. Craftsmen needed to open their shops. This wasn't about leisurely waking, it was about discipline, productivity, and often salvation. A mainstream historical fact for you, one of the earliest documented forms of alarm clock was the water clock, or clepsydra, used by the ancient Greeks and Romans. These ingenious devices, which measured time by the regulated flow of water, could be rigged with simple mechanisms to trigger a sound, often a small bell or gong, at a predetermined hour. Imagine listening to water slowly drip, drip, drip for hours, knowing it was bringing you closer to a surprisingly gentle wake-up call. Definitely more zen than your phone's default ringtone. Right. But these water clocks were complex, expensive, and not exactly portable. For the common person, your wake-up call might have been far more like human. You might have employed a knocker-up or knocker-upper, a person whose job it was to literally tap on your window with a long stick or throw pebbles until you woke up. A quirky tidbit in industrial towns. Particularly in Britain during the 19th century, knocker-uppers were a common profession, often using specialized tools like long poles or pea shooters to reach high windows. They'd charge a small fee, ensuring factory workers didn't miss their shifts. Imagine the horror of having a stranger poke your window every morning. It's like an analog, less polite version of your smart speaker yelling at you. So, you lived in a world where waking up wasn't just about personal discipline. It was a communal effort, a delicate dance between nature, ingenious contraptions, and sometimes a professional window tapper. Historians still argue whether the reliance on external wakers indicates a deeper, more natural sleep pattern in pre-industrial societies, or simply reflects the limited technology available to enforce modern timekeeping. Were people naturally more attuned to their circadian rhythms, or were they just really good at ignoring roosters? The debate floats in the air, a gentle question mark over centuries of slumber. The need for reliable morning awakeners grew with the increasing complexity of society. With the shift from agrarian rhythms to the more rigid schedules of monastic life, and later, the burgeoning urban centers and the relentless demands of emerging industries. You can almost feel the gentle pressure building, the collective sigh of humanity needing just a little more help to shake off the night. The stage, you see, is slowly being set for a very peculiar, very gentle revolution. The ticking, whirring, sometimes surprisingly loud. Revolution of mechanical morning awakeners. Get ready to hear the ancestors of your modern alarm clock begin to whir. You've already peered into the timeless struggle of waking up, remembering a world where your phone wasn't your primary antagonist each morning. Now, let's travel deeper into that past, exploring the ingenious, sometimes peculiar, ways our ancestors tried to conquer the tyranny of slumber without the benefit of gears and springs. This is the era of pre-mechanical awakeners, a time when creativity was the only limit to dragging yourself out of bed. One of the oldest and most elegant solutions was the water clock, or clepsydra as the Greeks called it. Imagine a tall, ornate vessel, perhaps carved from stone or bronze, with a tiny, precisely drilled hole near its base. Water would slowly drip out, causing a float inside to descend. You'd mark the sides of the vessel, and as the water level dropped, you could tell how much time had passed. But how did it become an alarm? Well, ancient engineers were clever. They'd rig the float to trip a lever when it reached a certain point, causing a small ball to drop into a brass basin, or perhaps even triggering a whistle or a small bell. The sound, while not jarringly loud, would be enough to rouse a monk for his morning prayers or a scholar for his studies. A mainstream historical fact, these sophisticated water clocks were widely used across ancient civilizations, from Egypt and Mesopotamia to Greece and Rome, serving as both timekeepers and early alarm systems for thousands of years before mechanical clocks existed. They were the original smart devices, just without the internet. You can almost hear the rhythmic drip, drip, drip of the water, a soothing sound that would accompany your sleep, a subtle reminder that time was slipping away. It's certainly a more tranquil way to be woken than a blaring siren. Isn't it, though? One downside you quickly discover is that these clocks needed constant refilling and were highly susceptible to temperature changes, which would affect the water's viscosity. So, if you lived in a particularly cold ancient Roman villa, your 6 a.m. wake-up might have been closer to 6:30 a.m., or even 7 a.m., rendering you late for your chariot race. It's like having a Wi-Fi connection that works perfectly well until it rains. Beyond water, people turn to fire. Imagine a candle clock. This was literally a candle marked with lines or embedded with pins at specific intervals. As the candle slowly burned down during the night, the flame would eventually reach a pin, causing it to drop and clatter onto a metal tray or basin below. The sound, sudden and metallic, would serve as your alarm. A quirky tidbit about candle clocks: they were often used in medieval monasteries and were a popular, albeit imprecise, way to mark time at night. Some even had weights attached to strings that would pull on a bell as the candle melted, providing a gentle jingle. The downside: if your candle had a particularly wonky wick, your alarm might be more surprise party than gentle wake-up call. Also, fire hazard. Not exactly sleep-friendly, is it? Then there were incense clocks, particularly popular in ancient China and Japan. These involved a pre-measured stick or trail of incense, marked at intervals, or sometimes with thin threads tied to weights. As the incense burned, it would reach a thread, causing a small metal weight to drop into a tray, creating a soft clink. The aroma would fill the room, perhaps giving you a pleasant, smoky wake-up. It's like a really, really slow-burning aromatherapy diffuser that also happens to tell time. You'd have to appreciate a culture that combines timekeeping with pleasant scents, even if it meant your alarm clock smelled like a dragon. Of course, nature provided its own solutions, though less precise. The rooster, with its unmistakable crow, served as a ubiquitous dawn chorus. You'd have to hope your particular rooster was more punctual than, say, your neighbor's cat, which only seems to wake up when it feels like it. And for those needing a more guaranteed wake-up call, especially as towns grew and industry demanded punctuality, humanity itself stepped in. Remember our friend the knocker-upper from the last section? They were the original human alarm clocks. Literally. You'd pay them a small fee, and they'd come to your window, tapping with a long pole or sometimes even using a pea shooter to pelt your window with dried peas until you stirred. You feel the faint tap, tap, tap on your imagined window, a persistent, unignorable rhythm. This was especially prevalent in industrial cities where factory workers needed to be at their posts at rigid times. Long before sunrise, it's a job description that definitely would not fly in the age of Yelp reviews. One star woke me up too aggressively and then threw a pea at me. Communal bells also played a significant role. You hear the deep, resonating toll of a church bell or town clock, echoing through the pre-dawn darkness, signaling the hour for prayer, for work, or simply the passage of time. This was a shared wake-up, pulling entire communities from their slumber. But what if you worked a different shift, or needed to wake before the communal bell? That's where the personal touch, however crude, became necessary. Historians still argue whether the transition from these organic, naturalistic, or human-mediated forms of waking to more precise mechanical devices significantly altered human sleep patterns. Did the invention of fixed timekeeping devices force people into more rigid sleep-wake cycles, overriding natural circadian rhythms, or did the increasing demands of society simply necessitate the development of better tools to manage already changing lifestyles? You feel the slow, inevitable creep of progress, the gentle, peculiar rise of our mechanical morning awakeners, whispering their first, clunky promises of precision and punctuality. They're coming, piece by agonizing piece. You've explored the clever, if sometimes unreliable, world of ancient alarms, from dripping water to persistent window tappers. But now, you're about to witness a truly transformative leap in timekeeping, a revolution that would lay the groundwork for your future morning nemesis. We're moving into medieval Europe, a world where the concept of time itself was about to be fundamentally reshaped, not by a single inventor, but by a collective need, primarily driven by monks. Imagine yourself in a quiet, stone monastery, the scent of parchment and cold dampness hanging in the air. Here, the passage of time wasn't just a convenience. It was a spiritual imperative. Monks needed to observe their canonical hours, specific times for prayer, day and night, with precision. The old water clocks were simply not accurate enough, too prone to freezing in winter, too demanding of constant attention. There was a desperate need for something more reliable, something that could keep track of the fleeting hours without human intervention. This intense spiritual necessity was the fertile ground from which the first true mechanical clocks would slowly, laboriously emerge. You feel the heavy, deliberate shift from measuring time by flow to measuring it by motion. The genius lay in the escapement mechanism, a tiny, intricate dance of gears and levers that allowed a controlled release of energy from a falling weight or a coiled spring, converting continuous motion into discrete, measurable ticks. This was the breakthrough, the secret sauce that made clocks. Clocks. A mainstream historical fact for you, the first true mechanical clocks, driven by weights and controlled by a verge escapement and a foliot balance, are believed to have emerged in Europe in the late 13th and early 14th centuries. These were not the sleek, pocket-sized devices you might imagine. They were colossal, clunky contraptions, often constructed by blacksmiths. Designed primarily for public display or monastic use, they were less like wristwatches and more like the first supercomputers. Huge, noisy, and absolutely revolutionary. You hear the rhythmic clunk, clunk, clunk of heavy lead weights. Descending, the whirring of massive brass gears, and then the deep, resonant bong of a bell. For these early clocks, the bell was often the primary output, as faces and hands were rare or non-existent. The word clock itself, in fact, comes from the Middle English word clock, which derives from the Middle Dutch clock, meaning bell. So, essentially, the first clocks were just really fancy. Automated bells. It's like building an incredibly complex machine just to tell you it's time for lunch, and then having to explain to everyone that, yes, the machine is just a giant lunch bell. These early mechanical marvels were incredibly expensive, costing more than entire villages. They required the most skilled artisans, blacksmiths for the frames, jewelers for the intricate gears, and bell founders for the massive gongs. Owning or commissioning one was a statement of immense wealth and power. You observe the awe in the faces of the medieval populace as they hear the great bell of the town clock toll, its sound echoing through the cobbled streets, bringing a new standardized sense of time to their lives, independent of the sun or the rooster. A quirky tidbit about some of these early mechanical clocks. Some incorporated elaborate automatons or moving figures. You might see a clock with little mechanical knights jousting on the hour, or a tiny carved figure of a monk emerging to strike a bell. These were not just timekeepers, they were theatrical marvels, designed to impress and entertain, reflecting the mechanical ingenuity of the age. Imagine waiting for the hourly chime and getting a mini robot show instead. That would definitely make me look forward to my alarm, even if it was at 4 a.m. These monumental timekeepers, however, were not personal alarms. You wouldn't find one ticking next to your feudal lord's bed. Their purpose was communal to standardize prayer times in monasteries, to regulate market hours in towns, or to signal shifts for guild workers. They brought a new level of precision to daily life, but they didn't solve the individual's problem of waking up at a specific, personal moment. That would require miniaturization and a fundamental shift in how time was perceived and used. Historians still argue about the exact origins of the escapement mechanism, the critical component that made mechanical clocks possible. Was it a wholly European invention? Or were there influences from earlier clockmaking traditions in the Islamic world or China, which also had sophisticated water and incense clocks? The precise lineage of this ingenious invention remains a subject of scholarly debate, a testament to the complex, interconnected nature of technological progress. You feel the slow, inexorable march of gears and weights, bringing with them the quiet promise of punctuality, a promise that would one day culminate in a tiny, insistent device sitting on your nightstand, demanding your attention. The first tick-tocks are beginning to echo through history. You've witnessed the birth of the mechanical clock, those grand, clunky titans of time that brought precision to monastic prayers and public life. But these early giants, with their ponderous weights and whirring gears, were largely content to merely mark the hours with a stately bong. They told you what time it was, but they didn't exactly demand your attention. Now, you're about to explore the next crucial, and perhaps most annoying, step in their evolution, the first rudimentary attempts to make them actually ring to wake you up. Imagine, if you will, the challenge. You've got a massive, intricate machine designed to keep time, a marvel of medieval engineering. How do you add a function that, at a specific point in its endless revolution, triggers a sudden, undeniable sound? This wasn't as simple as sticking a post-it note to a clock face. The initial solutions were ingenious in their simplicity, often leveraging the existing power source of the clock, the falling weights, to drive a separate mechanism. You can practically hear the clockmakers of the 14th and 15th centuries scratching their heads, muttering about how to get a hammer to hit a bell at precisely the right moment. These early alarm mechanisms were, to put it mildly, not subtle. Forget your gentle nature sounds or progressively brighter light alarms. These were designed to shock you awake. The most common method involved a specialized alarm wheel or pinwheel integrated into the clockwork. At a predetermined time, a pin on this wheel would engage a lever, which would then release a hammer. This hammer, powered by a small falling weight, or a coiled spring independent of the main clock's power source, but triggered by it, would then strike a bell, often repeatedly and with gusto, until its energy ran out or a brave soul stumbled out of bed to silence it. You hear the sudden clang, clang, clang echoing through a cold, stone monastery, a sound designed to cut through the deepest slumber. It's like having a miniature, very angry blacksmith living inside your clock. A mainstream historical fact: one of the earliest documented mechanical alarms was integrated into clocks as early as the 14th century, often designed to ring at a fixed hour, primarily for monks to rise for specific prayer services. For example, a clock might be set to strike a bell at 3 a.m. for matins. These were not adjustable for personal preferences. They were fixed alarms for fixed routines. So, if you were a night owl monk, too bad for you. You were getting up at 3 a.m. whether you liked it or not. No snooze button here, not even a conceptual one. It's a bit like having a school bell that rings at exactly 7 a.m. every day. And if you're not a student, well, tough luck. These early alarm clocks were still massive, costly, and largely confined to institutions like monasteries, universities, or public buildings. They weren't sitting on bedside tables. Their purpose remained communal punctuality, ensuring that large groups adhered to a shared schedule. You witness a group of medieval townsfolk, bundled against the pre-dawn chill, hurrying towards the market as the town clock's alarm bell rings out. A powerful, commanding sound that brooks no argument. A quirky tidbit about these early bells: they often produced a rather irregular, clashing sound, not the refined musical chime of later clocks. The hammer might strike the bell awkwardly, or the mechanism might stutter, leading to a cacophony that was less charming and more headache-inducing. Imagine trying to explain to the clockmaker that while you appreciate the waking function, the sound quality is giving you existential dread. Can it be less like a dying cat being beaten by a gong? The process of setting these rudimentary alarms was also far from user-friendly. You couldn't just twist a dial. It involved manipulating internal pins or levers, a task likely only performed by the clockmaker or a designated, mechanically inclined monk. This lack of easy adjustability meant that individual needs were still subservient to the institutional schedule. Historians still argue about the extent to which these early mechanical alarms imposed a new, more rigid sense of time discipline on everyday life. Rather than merely reflecting existing routines, did the clock create the need for punctuality? Or did the need for punctuality create the clock? You feel the subtle shift in human society as the external ticking demands of the mechanical world begin to gently, but firmly, shape the internal rhythms of slumber. The first clunky, triumphant rings of a new era are echoing through the dawn. You've seen the first tentative ticks of personal timekeeping, those early clunky alarm clocks finding their way into the homes of the affluent. But now, you're about to witness a seismic shift in human society, a transformation so profound it would fundamentally alter the very concept of mourning for millions. We're talking about the Industrial Revolution, a period of unprecedented change that didn't just build factories, it built a desperate, booming demand for synchronized wake-up calls. Imagine yourself in a sprawling, smoky industrial city in the late 18th or early 19th century. The rhythmic hum of agricultural life, the leisurely pace of artisan craft, those are fading memories. Instead, you hear the relentless clatter of looms, the hiss of steam engines, the metallic clang of machinery. This is a world driven by a new kind of rhythm, the relentless, unforgiving pulse of the factory. And for these factories to run efficiently, for the vast, intricate dance of production to flow smoothly, thousands upon thousands of workers needed to arrive at the same place, at the same time, often long before the sun even thought about making an appearance. This wasn't about a monk needing to pray at 3 a.m., or a wealthy merchant wanting to get a head start on his ledgers. This was about profit, efficiency, and the sheer scale of human labor harnessed to mechanical power. You feel the cold, pre-dawn air biting at your face as you imagine trudging through dark, soot-stained streets. If you were even a few minutes late, the entire production line could be held up. And trust me, your boss in the 19th century factory wasn't going to be understanding if you blamed the rooster. This was the dawn of what historians often call the tyranny of the clock, where time became a commodity, tightly controlled and universally standardized. It's like everyone suddenly had to sync their watches for the world's most intense group project. The old methods simply couldn't keep up. While knocker-uppers were still prevalent, remember our persistent window-tapping friends. They couldn't possibly cover entire towns or ensure every single worker was roused with precision. And those early, expensive personal alarm clocks, far too costly for the average factory worker. You wouldn't find one sitting on the bedside table of a textile mill operative, earning pennies a day. The problem was clear: a massive, collective need for punctuality, with no affordable or scalable solution. A mainstream historical fact for you: the Industrial Revolution fundamentally reshaped daily life, forcing a shift from natural time rhythms to artificial, clock-based schedules. Factory work introduced rigid shifts, often starting well before dawn, and demanded strict punctuality, leading to a surge in the demand for reliable and eventually affordable waking devices. This wasn't just about efficiency, it was about control, about getting the most out of human capital, and literally making every minute count. You can almost smell the coal smoke clinging to the air, hear the distant, repetitive thump, thump, thump of machinery that would define your waking hours. This era gave rise to the concept of the time clock at the factory gate, a clear demarcation between personal time and work time, and a harsh reminder of any tardiness. The social pressure to be punctual was immense, carrying economic consequences that could mean the difference between having food on the table and going hungry. Factories even had their own solutions. A quirky tidbit: some early factories installed massive steam-powered whistles or bells that would blast out a deafening signal, echoing across the entire town, signaling the start of shifts, meal breaks, and quitting time. Imagine trying to sleep through that. It was the original loud alarm, designed to wake not just one person, but entire neighborhoods, whether they worked at the factory or not. It's like your apartment building decided to install a foghorn to announce recycling day. Annoying, but effective. The development of shift work, with factories operating 24 hours a day, only intensified this need. People were no longer just waking at dawn, they were waking at midnight, or in the middle of the afternoon, depending on their shift. This completely disrupted traditional sleep patterns and made personalized, reliable alarms an absolute necessity for daily survival in the new industrial landscape. Historians still argue about the extent to which workers truly internalized this new time discipline, or if there was constant, subtle resistance to the factory bell's impersonal command. Did they embrace punctuality as a pathway to stability? Or did they resent it as an imposition on their natural rhythms? The echoes of that debate still resonate in the early morning darkness of industrial towns. You feel the relentless pressure building, the collective sigh of a society now firmly tethered to the ticking hands of the clock. This new era wouldn't just refine existing alarms, it would drive innovation, lower costs, and eventually bring a mechanical morning awakener, perhaps a loud and insistent one, within reach of almost every household. The stage is set for mass production, for a world where getting up on time would no longer be a luxury, but a necessity, orchestrated by a little ticking box on your bedside table. You've felt the relentless pulse of the Industrial Revolution, the insistent demand for punctuality that echoed across newly built factory towns. The need for precise, personal wake-up calls was no longer a luxury for the wealthy or a communal bell for monks. It was a fundamental requirement for the burgeoning workforce. And where there's a massive unmet need, innovation, and eventually mass production will inevitably follow. Imagine stepping into a clock factory in early to mid-19th century America or parts of Europe. Gone are the solitary artisans meticulously crafting each gear by hand in a dimly lit workshop. Instead, you hear the repetitive clatter of stamping machines, the whirring of lathes, the steady rhythm of assembly. This is the dawn of interchangeable parts, a concept that would revolutionize everything from muskets to, You guessed it, alarm clocks. Instead of one craftsman making an entire clock, now specialized workers would produce hundreds, thousands of identical springs, gears, and levers. It's like the industrial age version of an online marketplace. Only instead of selling handmade crafts, they were making time-telling machines at scale. This was the key to making alarm clocks affordable. When parts could be produced uniformly and then quickly assembled by less skilled labor, the cost plummeted. What was once a prohibitively expensive luxury, costing a significant chunk of a year's wages, slowly became something an ordinary working-class family could aspire to own. You can almost feel the collective sigh of relief from tired factory workers who could now purchase a small, reliable device that promised to get them to their grueling shifts on time, without relying on a grumpy neighbor or a distant factory whistle. A mainstream historical fact for you: the American clock industry, particularly in Connecticut during the 19th century, was at the forefront of mass-producing mechanical clocks, including alarm clocks. Pioneers like Eli Terry, Seth Thomas, and Chauncey Jerome developed methods for making clocks cheaply and efficiently, flooding the market with affordable timepieces that were previously unattainable for the average person. These Yankee clocks were often made with wooden movements at first, later transitioning to brass, further driving down costs and ensuring durability. They were the original Made in America success story, just with more gears and less glowing screens. You observe the sheer volume of production. Clocks are lined up, row after row, their tiny mechanisms ticking in unison, creating a symphony of timekeeping. The simple, utilitarian designs of these mass-produced alarm clocks begin to emerge. They are no longer ornate, gilded showpieces. They are practical, often housed in painted tin or humble wooden cases, with clear, easy-to-read dials and prominent bells on top. Their purpose is singular: to wake you up, loudly and repeatedly. If you're a deep sleeper, a quirky tidbit that reflects this shift: some of these early mass-produced alarm clocks, particularly the cheaper ones, would often use printed paper dials glued onto metal or wood, rather than hand-painted or engraved brass. This was a cost-saving measure that dramatically sped up production and further reduced prices. It's like buying a fancy smartphone today versus a no-frills flip phone from 20 years ago. Both tell time, but one clearly prioritizes economy over elegance. They might not have been beautiful, but they certainly did their job. The advent of mass-produced alarm clocks had a profound impact on daily life. For the first time, individual households across a broader economic spectrum gained autonomy over their morning schedules. You could now set your own wake-up time, adjusting it for different shifts or for special occasions. This wasn't just convenience, it was a subtle shift in power, giving individuals a tool to better manage their increasingly complex lives in an industrializing world. You feel the weight of this new responsibility, the realization that you truly have no excuse for being late now. Historians still argue whether the widespread availability of cheap alarm clocks further entrenched the rigid discipline of industrial time, or if it simply provided a necessary tool for individuals to navigate an already established system. Did these clocks empower workers to meet the demands of their jobs, or did they just make the demands of their jobs more inescapable? The ticking chorus of these mass-produced devices echoes through the dormitories and humble cottages of the 19th century, a constant, insistent reminder that time, once fluid, was now a precisely measured commodity, ready to be announced with a jarring clang each morning. This was the era where the alarm clock truly became a household fixture, for better or for worse. You've witnessed the birth of mass production, those humming, clattering factories that began churning out alarm clocks for the burgeoning industrial workforce. Now, let's hone in on a specific corner of the world where this revolution truly hit its stride, turning the humble alarm clock from a niche item into an everyday necessity, and proving that ingenuity, when combined with good old-fashioned hustle, can conquer even the deepest slumber. Welcome to 19th century America, where the Yankee clock was about to make its loud, insistent call. Imagine the American landscape in the early to mid-1800s. As European clockmakers often continued with more artsy, expensive methods, a band of ambitious, innovative American clockmakers, particularly from Connecticut, began to think differently. Their goal wasn't just to make clocks, it was to make clocks for everyone. This meant driving down costs, simplifying designs, and producing them on an unprecedented scale. It was essentially the Silicon Valley of its day, but with more gears and less venture capital. These pioneers, names like Eli Terry, Seth Thomas, and Chauncey Jerome, didn't just build clocks, they built systems. They perfected the use of interchangeable parts, meaning if a gear broke in one clock, you didn't need a custom replacement. You could grab another identical gear from a pile. This might sound obvious to us now, but it was revolutionary then, a stark contrast to the hand-fitted uniqueness of European clocks. You can almost hear the steady thwack, thwack, thwack of the stamping machines, turning out uniform brass plates and gears by the thousand. This was the true engine of affordability. A mainstream historical fact for you: the American clock industry of the 19th century was a global leader in demonstrating the power of mass production, using interchangeable parts, making mechanical clocks, including alarm clocks, incredibly affordable and accessible to the average household. This American system of manufacturing was so successful, it later influenced other industries worldwide. From firearms to sewing machines, they were the original disruptors, making timekeeping democratic. The result? The famous Yankee clock. These weren't fancy, ornate pieces for the mantelpiece, though some could be. They were often simple, sturdy, and reliable. Many featured exposed brass bells on top, giving them their characteristic no-nonsense look and, more importantly, their characteristic no-nonsense sound. You hear the sharp, insistent ring, ring, ring of a brass bell, designed to cut through sleep like a hot knife through butter. No gentle chimes or soothing melodies here. This was about getting you out of bed pronto. Distribution was key, too. These clocks weren't just sold in fancy urban shops. Enter the Yankee peddler, often depicted as a shrewd, resourceful character who traveled the nascent American landscape, carrying these affordable clocks in his wagon or backpack, bringing timekeeping directly to rural farms and frontier settlements. It's like an early door-to-door sales strategy, but instead of vacuum cleaners, they were selling the very concept of punctuality. Imagine a salesman convincing you that you absolutely need this loud, brass contraption to achieve your dreams. Surprisingly effective. A quirky tidbit from this era to further reduce costs. Some early American clockmakers experimented with using cheaper materials for their movements. For a time, many popular shelf clocks actually had wooden movements instead of brass. While less durable in the long run, they were incredibly cheap to produce, allowing for even lower prices. This briefly made America the world leader in producing disposable clocks, a concept that would later become a hallmark of mass production. It's like they invented the plastic disposable razor, but for telling time. The widespread availability of these affordable alarm clocks played a significant role in shaping American society. As the nation industrialized and moved from agrarian rhythms to factory schedules, the alarm clock became an indispensable tool for individual workers, ensuring they met the rigid demands of the new economy. Punctuality transitioned from a personal virtue to an absolute necessity. Reinforced by the insistent clang of the bedside bell, historians still argue whether the dominance of the American clock industry and its mass production methods were truly a unique American innovation, or if they were an evolution of earlier European ideas about interchangeable parts and factory systems. Was it purely a stroke of Yankee genius, or a clever adaptation of existing concepts? The debate ticks on, a quiet counterpoint to the loud, confident ringing of millions of American-made alarm clocks spreading across the globe, bringing with them a new era of personal time discipline, one loud clang at a time. The mechanical morning awakener was now truly within reach for the masses. You've heard the persistent call of American ingenuity, those mass-produced Yankee clocks that brought punctuality within reach of practically everyone. But as the 19th century marched on, and the mechanical morning awakener cemented its place in the household, Something else began to evolve alongside its gears and springs its aesthetics. No longer just a clunky contraption, the alarm clock started to find its style, transforming from often ornate, bespoke pieces into increasingly functional and eventually iconic designs. Imagine a journey from a dimly lit artisan workshop to a brightly lit factory floor. The earliest personal alarm clocks, if you recall, were often quite decorative, made of polished brass or fine wood, sometimes even with intricate engravings or tiny mechanical figures. They were statement pieces, showing off both wealth and precision, but with mass production, that simply wasn't sustainable or necessary. The focus shifted to efficiency, to making a product that did its job reliably and could be produced quickly and cheaply. It's like how early cars looked like fancy horse carriages, then gradually became their own sleek, efficient machines. The materials themselves tell a story. You see the shift from heavy, cast brass and rich, dark woods to lighter, more malleable metals like pressed steel, often nickel-plated for a bright, silvery finish, or painted in practical enamels. This made them lighter, less expensive, and easier to manufacture in vast quantities. The inner workings might still be brass, but the outer shell was now designed for the masses. You feel the cool, smooth surface of a nickel-plated case, a stark contrast to the hand-rubbed warmth of earlier wooden models. The dial design also underwent a crucial evolution. Gone were the sometimes fussy, complex faces of older clocks. Mass-produced alarms favored clarity, large, legible Arabic numerals, distinct hour and minute hands, and a separate, often smaller, alarm-setting hand, usually with an arrow or pointer. The goal was instant readability. Even in the dim light of a pre-dawn bedroom, you can almost see the numbers jumping out at you, telling you precisely how little sleep you have left. And then, there was the bell. Early alarms often had an internal gong or a single bell mounted on top. But as the need for louder, more insistent alarms grew, the iconic twin bell or bell top design became the dominant form. A mainstream historical fact for you, the twin bell mechanical alarm clock, with its two prominent bells flanking a hammer striking repeatedly between them, became a ubiquitous symbol of morning awakenings in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. This design, often called a repeater or bell-top alarm, was incredibly effective at cutting through sleep and was mass-produced by companies worldwide. It's the alarm clock design that probably lives rent-free in your brain when you think of an old-fashioned alarm. Imagine the sound of sharp, metallic clang, not a gentle chime, but an insistent, jarring racket designed to pull you from the deepest slumber. The twin bells, often made of brass or steel, vibrated furiously as the hammer rapidly struck between them, creating a truly unforgettable and often hated morning symphony. You hear that distinctive sound now, a rhythmic clang, 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 that even a concrete wall might struggle to ignore. This era also saw the rise of more specialized designs. You'd find small, like foldable traveling alarms, often with hinged covers that protected the dial during journeys. There were also early novelty designs, though less common than the utilitarian models. A quirky tidbit: some companies experimented with alarm clocks shaped like houses, animals, or even miniature versions of famous landmarks, appealing to a growing consumer desire for decorative yet functional household items. Imagine waking up to a miniature Eiffel Tower ringing its bells at 6 a.m. Probably still effective, but definitely more charming than a plain box. They were proof that even a tool designed to ruin your morning could have a little personality. The shift in aesthetics mirrored a broader societal change. The alarm clock was no longer a rare, as expensive curiosity. It was a commonplace utility, a silent until it wasn't partner in the daily grind. Its design evolved to reflect this: simple, honest, and purely functional. It didn't need to impress with its ornamentation. It needed to impress with its ability to consistently wake you up. Historians still argue whether the simplification and standardization of alarm clock design reflected a pure embrace of functionalism, or if it was also a subtle sign of a broader societal shift towards less ornate, more democratic aesthetics in the industrial age. Did the alarm clock's looks change purely for efficiency? Or did it subtly reflect changing tastes in a rapidly modernizing world? You ponder this question as you envision rows of identical nickel-plated alarm clocks, each waiting to deliver its loud, uncompromising call to a new day. The mechanical morning awakener had truly found its form and its voice, and it wasn't going to be quiet about it. You've seen the mechanical morning awakener evolve from a clunky monastery bell to a sleek, mass-produced twin bell ringer. The world of gears and springs had done its best to conquer sleep. But as the 20th century dawned, a new force began to hum. Quietly at first, then with increasing power, ready to transform the very fabric of daily life electricity. And with it, your alarm clock was about to get a serious, rather gentle upgrade. Imagine waking up, not to the frantic clang, clang, clang of a hammer on brass, but to the almost silent, steady tick of a clock that never needed winding. This was the magic of the electric clock. No more fumbling for a winding key in the dark. No more worries about your clock running down in the middle of the night. As power grids expanded across cities and into homes, these clocks simply plugged into the wall, drawing a constant, reliable source of energy. You can almost feel the gentle hum of the electric motor, a quiet contrast to the mechanical whirring you've grown accustomed to. It's like discovering infinite battery life for your devices. A true game changer. The earliest electric clocks used small electric motors to drive their gears. But a significant innovation was the synchronous motor clock. A mainstream historical fact for you, the widespread adoption of synchronous electric clocks in the early 20th century marked a significant leap in timekeeping accuracy for the average household. These clocks use the precise frequency of the alternating current AC from the power grid to regulate their speed, meaning they were as accurate as the power station's master clock. Your alarm clock was suddenly synchronized with everyone else's, down to the second, making national punctuality a truly achievable goal. No more blaming your alarm for being a few minutes slow if you were late. It was on you. This new technology allowed for entirely new designs. Gone were the exposed bells, the bulky cases. Electric clocks often featured sleeker, more streamlined aesthetics, with cases made of new materials like bakelite, a type of early plastic, or brightly colored metals. The dials sometimes glowed with radium paint, allowing you to see the time in the dark without fumbling for a light switch. You see the warm, gentle glow of a radium-painted dial in the pre-dawn gloom, a subtle, reassuring presence. But the real revolution in waking came when this new power source met another burgeoning technology: the radio. Suddenly, your alarm clock wasn't just a timekeeping device, it was an information and entertainment hub. The radio alarm clock emerged, allowing you to wake up to music, the morning news, or the cheerful or sometimes irritating voice of a radio announcer. You hear the faint crackle of static, then the smooth jazz of a morning show, or the authoritative voice delivering the headlines, slowly pulling you from your slumber. It's like your smart speaker, but way less smart and definitely more crackly. The first radio alarms were clunky, often combining a clock mechanism with a rudimentary radio receiver in a single, rather large wooden or bakelite cabinet. But their convenience was undeniable. For many, waking up to the outside world, to a human voice or a song, was a far more pleasant experience than the jarring clang of a mechanical bell. It brought the world directly into your bedroom, starting your day with a connection to current events or popular culture. Imagine hearing the weather forecast or the latest hit song before you even brushed your teeth. A quirky tidbit that reflects the novelty of these early radio alarms: some models featured a very abrupt on switch for the radio, meaning you went from complete silence to a full blast of sound at your set time, often with a burst of static first. It was a jarring, but effective, way to ensure you were awake. Others might have had a crude volume control that was difficult to set, leading to either an inaudible whisper or a surprisingly loud jolt. It's like your modern phone alarm that starts at 0 volume then ramps up, but theirs just went from 0 to 100 with no warning. The widespread adoption of electric and radio alarms cemented the alarm clock's place as an indispensable household item. It was no longer just for factory workers, it was for office clerks, homemakers, students, anyone whose day now revolved around a precise schedule. The mechanical morning awakener was now a seamless, almost invisible part of daily life, silently ticking or humming away until its appointed moment of awakening. Historians still argue whether the increased reliability and ubiquitous nature of electric and radio alarms further blurred the lines between work and personal life by making punctuality even more enforced and pervasive. Did waking up to the news or a timed broadcast make people feel more connected to the world, or more constantly on the clock? The gentle hum of the electric motor, the soft glow of the dial, and the familiar sound of a radio voice all contributed to a new era of waking, one where the boundaries between sleep and the demands of the day became ever more precise and, at times, more insistent. You've seen the alarm clock evolve from a crude, clanking tower to a sleek, bakelite-cased radio companion? Electricity had tamed the wild beast of time, making it hum instead of clang. But as the world emerged from the shadow of World War II, a new era of consumerism and convenience dawned. And with it came perhaps the most insidious, yet utterly irresistible innovation. In the history of morning awakeners, the snooze button. Prepare yourself, because this little button is about to become your favorite enemy. Imagine the post-war boom. Factories that once churned out tanks and planes now focused on washing machines, refrigerators, and, of course, home electronics. People had money to spend, and they wanted appliances that made life easier, more comfortable. The alarm clock, already a household staple, was ripe for refinement, no longer just a functional tool. It was now expected to offer a little more finesse, a touch of gentle persuasion. You feel the optimistic hum of this new era, where even waking up was supposed to be a smoother experience. The core problem, as designers and engineers must have mused, was the human condition itself, the universal desire for just 5 more minutes. That desperate plea whispered to the pillow, that longing for a brief reprieve before facing the day. And so, the snooze button was born. A mainstream historical fact for you. The snooze function was introduced on mechanical alarm clocks in the mid-1950s, with the first widely credited patent typically linked to the Westclock's Drowse electric alarm clock in 1956. This seemingly simple addition completely revolutionized the morning ritual, offering a brief, blessed extension of slumber before the inevitable return of the alarm. You observe the design of these new clocks. They're often made of plastic, in softer, more rounded forms, sometimes in pastel colors that reflect the mid-century modern aesthetic. The alarm sounds are changing too. Gone are the harsh, metallic clangs of the twin bell alarms. Now you hear gentler buzzers, or sometimes more refined, slightly less aggressive chimes. You feel the satisfying thunk of a large, flat button on top of the clock, almost beckoning you to press it. It's a button designed for sleepy fingers, an irresistible invitation to delay the inevitable. It's like having a tiny, well-meaning devil on your shoulder whispering, "Just a little bit longer. You've earned it." The psychological impact of the snooze button is immense. It transforms the alarm from a singular, unavoidable jolt into a series of negotiable demands. You gain a brief sense of control, a fleeting victory over the relentless march of time. That initial blast of sound triggers a moment of panic. Then the sweet relief of pressing the button, sinking back into the warm embrace of blankets, knowing you have a few more minutes to dream, to plan, or simply to exist in that blissful pre-waking state. This short reprieve, however, often comes at a cost, making the subsequent awakenings even harder. A quirky tidbit about the snooze button. Why is it often exactly 9 minutes? There are a few theories, but the most common one points back to the earliest mechanical gears. It was often easier for clockmakers to adjust the gearing to trigger the alarm in precisely 9-minute intervals rather than around 10, due to the number of teeth on the gear. So your little extra snooze is a legacy of 1950s engineering efficiency, not some grand sleep science. It's like discovering that your favorite snack comes in an odd number because the factory machine just happened to be set that way. Other convenience features also gained traction during this period. Luminous dials. which had once used radioactive radium, now employed safer phosphorescent materials, allowing you to check the time in the dark with a soft, green glow. The movements became quieter, the hum of the electric motor barely perceptible, allowing for a more peaceful sleep before the designated wake-up time. The alarm clock was no longer just a necessity. It was an integrated part of the bedroom environment, designed to be seen, used, and most importantly, silenced repeatedly. Historians still argue whether the snooze button is a positive or negative influence on human sleep habits. Does it allow for a gentler transition to wakefulness, leading to less morning grogginess and better mood, or does it merely fragment sleep, creating a cycle of disturbed slumber and making it harder to truly wake up, ultimately leaving you feeling more tired? The debate continues to ring in the quiet moments before your alarm, a testament to the complex relationship we have with this deceptively simple invention. You feel the pull of that button, the gentle tyranny it exerts, knowing that while it promises peace, it often delivers only more struggle. The snooze button, you see, is a perfect reflection of humanity's eternal dance with "you've been lulled by the hum of electric clocks," and perhaps even curse the gentle tyranny of the snooze button. But as the 20th century moved past its midpoint, a quiet revolution was brewing in the world of electronics, one that would utterly transform the very face of time itself. And with it, your morning wake-up call? We're about to enter the era of digital displays, microchips, and a whole new kind of silent, glowing precision for your alarm clock. Imagine walking into an electronics store in the 1970s. The familiar round faces of mechanical clocks, with their ticking hands, are still present. But something new and futuristic is gleaming from the shelves. It's a sleek, often rectangular box with no moving parts on its face. Just a steady, unblinking red or green glow. This was the dawn of the digital alarm clock, a marvel of the new semiconductor age. The invention of transistors, and then integrated circuits, those tiny microchips, meant that complex electronic circuits could replace intricate mechanical gears. You feel the smooth, cool plastic casing, a stark contrast to the metal and wood of previous generations. The most obvious change was the display itself. Gone were the hands, in their place, glowing numbers. These were typically made of light-emitting diodes LEDs, glowing in a vibrant, almost alien red or green. Later, liquid crystal displays LCDs, with their darker digits against a lighter background, would offer more energy efficiency and portability. A mainstream historical fact for you? The widespread adoption of affordable digital alarm clocks, with LED and later LCD displays in the 1970s and 1980s, quickly made them a ubiquitous household item, rapidly displacing traditional mechanical and analog electric clocks. It was like suddenly everyone's phone went from a flip phone to a smartphone overnight. But for telling time, this digital shift brought unprecedented precision. Unlike mechanical clocks, which could be affected by dust or wear, digital clocks used crystal oscillators, tiny vibrating quartz crystals, to keep incredibly accurate time. They rarely, if ever, needed adjustment, unless you were particularly unlucky with a power outage. You appreciate the quiet accuracy. No more ticking to lull you to sleep or keep you awake. And the alarm sounds. They moved from bells and buzzers to sharp, insistent beeps and electronic tones. It was a new sound, less organic and more insistent, a precise digital demand to wake up. It's like switching from a live band to a very precise, repetitive synthesizer. The simplicity of setting a digital alarm was also a game changer. No more rotating hands or fumbling with small dials, just press a button for hour and another for minute, often with satisfying clicks. And then, the iconic moment if the power went out. You'd often wake up to a blinking 12 zrutchios, a universal symbol of technological frustration. It's truly a rite of passage, having to reset every single digital clock in your house after a brief power flicker. With microchips came the ability to add more features without adding bulk or cost. Digital alarm clocks often included built-in timers, multiple alarm settings, battery backups to avoid that blinking 12 thankfully, and sometimes even sleep timers for the radio. Their smaller footprint meant they fit easily on any bedside table, silently waiting for their moment to shine literally. A quirky tidbit from the early days of digital, some of the very first digital clocks had what was called ghosting on their displays, where faint outlines of unlit segments could sometimes be seen, creating a slightly blurry or incomplete look. It was a minor imperfection, but it added a certain charm to these early tech marvels, reminding you that even the future had its rough edges. Also, some early buzzers were shockingly loud, going from silent to an ear-splitting shriek without warning. It was a less gentle approach to waking, more like a sudden electronic assault. The transition to digital timekeeping wasn't just about technology, it was about how we perceived time. Analog clocks show time as a continuous flow, a cycle. Digital clocks present time as discrete, absolute numbers. Historians still argue whether this shift from a cyclical, analog representation to a linear digital one altered our psychological relationship with time. Did it make us more rigid, more focused on exact moments rather than broader periods? The silent glow of your digital display, precisely ticking off the seconds, continues this fascinating debate in your own bedroom. The digital alarm clock had arrived, efficient, precise, and utterly silent until it wasn't, marking a bold new dawn in the history of waking up. You've traversed centuries of alarm clock evolution, from ancient water drips to the insistent electronic glow of a digital display. You've even wrestled with the tempting tyranny of the snooze button. But now, as you lie comfortably, imagine a different kind of morning awakening, one that's less about a dedicated device and more about a seamless integration into your entire digital life. We're talking about the age of smart waking and personalized rhythms, where your alarm clock has essentially moved into your pocket and often onto your wrist. Cast your mind back to the late 20th and early 21st centuries. A new ubiquitous device began to colonize every aspect of our lives: the smartphone. Suddenly, that dedicated alarm clock on your bedside table started to look a little redundant. Your phone, with its built-in clock, its endless array of customizable ringtones, and its ability to vibrate silently, quickly became the primary morning awakener for millions. You feel the subtle buzz of your phone under your pillow, or hear a gentle, pre-downloaded melody beginning to swell, far from the jarring beep, beep, beep of old. It's like carrying an entire sound studio in your pocket, just for waking up. This shift brought unparalleled customization. You could choose anything from ocean waves to heavy metal, from a chirping bird to your favorite podcast. You could set multiple alarms, label them, and even set them to repeat on specific days. For a mainstream historical fact, the smartphone, with its native clock and alarm functionality, largely supplanted the traditional standalone alarm clock as the primary waking device for the vast majority of people by the early 2010s, fundamentally changing the landscape of morning routines. It was a silent takeover, no clanging bells needed. But the innovation didn't stop there. Enter the era of wearable technology and sleep tracking. Smartwatches and fitness bands, nestled comfortably on your wrist, began to monitor your sleep cycles, how much deep sleep, light sleep, and REM sleep you were getting. The idea here was revolutionary. Instead of waking you at a fixed, arbitrary time, these devices could now theoretically wake you during your lightest phase of sleep within a set window. You'd set your desired wake-up time, say 7 a.m., and the alarm would gently rouse you anytime between, for example, 6:30 a.m. and 7 a.m., when your body was naturally closest to waking. The goal to avoid that groggy, disoriented feeling you get when pulled from deep sleep. You might feel a subtle vibration on your wrist, or a gentle melody playing softly, easing you out of slumber rather than yanking you. This focus on a gentler wake-up led to other innovations. Light-based alarms, which had existed in rudimentary forms, became sophisticated. These devices slowly brighten a lamp in your room, mimicking a natural sunrise, tricking your brain into a more gradual awakening. Imagine the slow diffusion of warm light, gradually filling your room, preparing your body to wake before any sound even begins. It's like having your own personal, on-demand sunrise without the need for a window facing east. These often come with natural sounds too, turning your room into a digital nature preserve. The personalization of waking became almost an art form. Your alarm could now be integrated with smart home devices, turning on your bedroom lights, starting your coffee maker, or even adjusting your thermostat before you even set foot out of bed. Your phone, ever the overachiever, might even factor in your calendar, traffic conditions, or weather forecasts to suggest an optimal wake-up time. It's like having a very dedicated, slightly overbearing, but ultimately helpful personal assistant. A quirky tidbit that exemplifies this smart alarm trend. Some apps or devices introduced challenge alarms, where you had to solve a math problem, scan a QR code in another room, or even shake your phone a certain number of times before the alarm would turn off. Designed to combat the snooze button, these were effective but often deeply irritating. Imagine having to do mental arithmetic before your first coffee. It's a level of commitment some of us just aren't ready for. The digital revolution of alarms has made them incredibly precise, customizable, and increasingly smart. They aim to understand your sleep, not just dictate your wake-up time. However, this level of integration and data collection also raises questions. Historians still argue whether the quantification of sleep through tracking devices genuinely improves sleep quality and reduces morning anxiety, or if it merely adds another layer of technological distraction and performance pressure to what should be a natural, restful process. Are we truly sleeping better, or just obsessing more about our sleep scores? You feel the subtle vibrations and gentle lights of this new era of waking, pondering whether the relentless pursuit of the perfect wake-up is a blessing or just another subtle form of modern stress. Your phone, silently judging your sleep patterns, waits patiently for its moment to gently, yet precisely, pull you into the day. Now, as the last whispers of waking history gently fade, allow yourself to drift back to the soft comfort of your own bed. The distant clang of ancient water clocks, the persistent tap of the knocker-upper, the proud tick of early mechanical alarms, and the sleek, silent glow of digital displays. Let these sensory details slowly dissolve, softening into the quiet hum of your room. You've explored humanity's timeless struggle with slumber, witnessed ingenious solutions, and seen how technology has, for better or worse, shaped our mornings. From the need for prayer to the demands of industry, the alarm clock has always been there, a peculiar, gentle, and sometimes infuriating companion. Feel the calm settle around you, the gentle reassurance that even the most mundane objects have a rich, fascinating history. Let your thoughts drift, light as a feather, away from the complexities of gears and microchips and into the peaceful embrace of the present. The time for historical exploration is complete. Close your eyes. Take a slow, deep breath, and let your mind simply rest. The quiet history of waking up will always be there. But for tonight, your own journey is complete. Sleep now, gently, knowing you've learned a peculiar tale. You've explored the long, peculiar journey of the morning awakener, from ancient water drips and persistent knocker-uppers to the silent glow of your smartphone's digital display. You've witnessed humanity's relentless quest for punctuality, driven by everything from monastic prayers to factory shifts. But as you lie here, safe from any imminent digital shriek or mechanical clang, let's ponder the true, complex nature of this indispensable device, the alarm's gentle paradox. It's a tool we absolutely need, and yet often the thing we hate most in our lives. Imagine the universal experience that moment, just before the alarm goes off, when you're deep in the blissful embrace of sleep, perhaps drifting through a particularly pleasant dream. Then it happens. A sound, a vibration, a slowly brightening light. Whatever your chosen method, it's an undeniable summons back to reality. That feeling of being forcibly pulled from slumber, The sudden jolt from peace to demand is a shared human experience that transcends cultures and centuries. You feel that brief flicker of resentment, that internal groan, a primal protest against the intrusion. It's like getting a phone call at 3 a.m. from your boss, only it's your own clock calling and you can't fire it. This love-hate relationship is the core paradox of the alarm clock. We rely on it utterly. Without it, how many appointments would you miss? How many deadlines would pass? How many important moments would slip by because you were still nestled in dreamland? A mainstream historical fact, the widespread reliance on alarm clocks, whether dedicated devices or smartphone features in modern industrialized societies, demonstrates a near-universal societal agreement on the importance of punctuality and fixed schedules. Highlighting our collective dependence on these wake-up calls, we've built a world where being on time is a fundamental expectation, and the alarm clock is the silent, or not so silent, enforcer of that expectation. Yet, despite its necessity, the alarm clock is the literal end of comfort, the abrupt interruption of peace. It symbolizes the demands of the outside world, breaking into your private sanctuary of sleep. It represents the transition from personal freedom to societal obligation. You feel the weight of this daily shift, the knowledge that the world outside is waiting, even if your body and soul would prefer just 5 more minutes. It's like having a personal trainer who shows up at your door every morning, whether you signed up for the session or not. The snooze button, as we've discussed, is a testament to this paradox. It's our collective attempt to negotiate with the inevitable, to gain a brief, fleeting victory over time itself. That extra 9 minutes isn't just about more sleep. It's about a psychological truce, a tiny moment of defiance before submission. A quirky tidbit: some people historically, and even today, developed elaborate schemes to trick their alarms, like putting the clock in a separate room, forcing them to get up to turn it off, or even creating complex pulley systems to drop the alarm into a bucket of water less gentle, more destructive. It's a testament to the lengths we'll go to both use and simultaneously fight against our morning awakeners. We are truly our own worst enemies when it comes to waking up. This love-hate dynamic has led to an interesting evolution in alarm design. We still need them to be effective, but we crave them to be gentle. Hence the rise of light alarms, nature sounds, and progressively louder melodies. We want the outcome: waking up on time without the unpleasant process being jolted awake. It's like wanting to go to the gym, but only if it involves a nap on the couch. Historians still argue whether the alarm clock, by forcing us into unnatural wake-up times dictated by schedules rather than our internal circadian rhythms, contributes to widespread sleep deprivation, chronic fatigue, and even burnout in modern society. Does this indispensable tool, in its insistence on punctuality, actually make us less healthy and less rested, or is it simply a necessary evil, a reflection of the fast-paced world we've built, without which our entire system would crumble? The debate is as persistent as your alarm on a Monday morning. You hear the faint, lingering echo of every alarm you've ever set, every dream it's ever interrupted, every early start it's ever enforced. It's a sound, or a feeling, that binds us across time, connecting you to monks in cold monasteries, factory workers in smoky cities, and modern commuters staring at glowing screens. The alarm clock, in all its forms, is a silent, sometimes not so silent, partner in our daily lives, a constant reminder of our obligations and our aspirations. It's the peculiar, gentle, and utterly essential tool that pulls us, often reluctantly, from the comforting embrace of the night and into the bright, demanding light of a new day. And as you prepare for your own slumber, it waits patiently, ready to perform its ancient, paradoxical duty once more. You've journeyed through millennia of human waking, from sun-drenched dawns and dripping water clocks to the modern digital glow and the cunning snooze button. We've seen technology strive to make morning punctual, then gentle, then smart. But as you lie here, safe and sound, let's gaze into the not-so-distant future, peering into the potential evolution of the morning awakener. What comes after the smart alarm? How will we, in the coming decades, finally conquer the final frontier of waking up? Imagine a world where your alarm clock isn't a device on your nightstand, or even an app on your phone. Instead, it's a subtle, almost invisible presence, intricately woven into your sleep environment. Think of biofeedback alarms. These aren't just tracking your movement, they're reading your body's precise signals. Your heart rate variability, your respiration, even your brainwave patterns, all are constantly monitored. The alarm doesn't simply go off at a set time, it waits for the optimal moment within your sleep cycle, gently nudging you awake during your lightest sleep phase. You wouldn't be rudely interrupted from a deep dream, you'd float to consciousness, barely noticing the transition. It's like having a personal sleep concierge who knows you better than you know yourself. Creepy. Maybe a little? Convenient. Absolutely. This kind of advanced sleep monitoring is a mainstream historical fact in current research, though not yet fully consumer-ready for optimal waking. Scientists and technologists are constantly exploring the nuances of sleep phases and how to best transition between them for improved cognitive function and mood. The dream is to eliminate morning grogginess entirely. Beyond mere monitoring, imagine personalized environmental control systems. Your bedroom itself becomes the alarm, a slowly brightening light, perfectly calibrated to your specific circadian rhythm, might simulate a dawn unique to your body. Perhaps a gentle change in room temperature, a subtle increase or decrease to nudge you towards wakefulness. Even scent could play a role, a faint, pleasant aroma diffusing into the air to gently stimulate your senses. You might wake to the smell of fresh coffee before it's brewed. A truly futuristic touch. It's like a meticulously choreographed ballet of sensory inputs, all designed to make you think you woke up naturally, even when you absolutely did not. Then there's the more speculative, almost sci-fi realm. What about alarms that use subtle neuroenhancement or direct brain stimulation? Imagine a device that, through safe, low-frequency sound waves or light pulses, subtly influences your brain activity, easing you from a deeper sleep state into a lighter one. This isn't about shocking you awake, it's about guiding your brain, preparing it for consciousness long before your set time. A quirky tidbit you might find in a science fiction novel that's slowly becoming reality. Future alarms could potentially integrate with augmented reality systems, allowing you to wake up in a simulated virtual environment that's calming and personalized, easing you into your day before your eyes even open. No more dreary bedroom views. It's like getting a scenic, personalized opening sequence to your day instead of just the credits rolling. And what about predictive alarms powered by artificial intelligence? These smart systems would learn your habits, your sleep quality, your upcoming schedule, and even external factors like traffic or weather. They could then dynamically adjust your wake-up time, nudging you a little earlier if there's a big meeting, or letting you sleep in a few extra minutes if your schedule is light and your sleep debt is high. Your AI would know, almost instinctively, when you need that extra 5 minutes, or when you absolutely must get up now. It's like having a hyper-organized personal assistant who also happens to be a sleep scientist. Historians still argue whether this hyper-personalized and increasingly integrated sleep technology will genuinely improve overall well-being, or if it will lead to new forms of anxiety and dependence. Will we become so reliant on technology to optimize our sleep and waking that we lose our innate ability to regulate our own bodies? Will the constant quantification of sleep lead to performance anxiety even in our dreams? The debate hovers over the quiet hum of advanced sensors and algorithms, a complex question mark above your perfectly optimized sleep. Ultimately, despite all the technological marvels, the core challenge remains the inherent human desire for rest, coupled with the relentless demands of the waking world. Whether it's a pebble on a window, a booming factory whistle, a twin bell, or a biofeedback-driven brain stimulator. The history of the alarm clock is the story of our ongoing negotiation with slumber. You feel the potential of these futuristic awakeners, the promise of a truly gentle transition. But perhaps, the deepest dream of all is not a perfect alarm, but a world where we wake up, simply, when we're ready, sweet dreams.